What's up, Chaos Shinobi here. This is What If Naruto has ancient Tenseigan. Summary: ancient blood mixes in strange ways. Naruto's Tenseigan see more than any other, all the way back to the original Otsutsuki. With those eyes, he can see the darkness no one else can. Chapter 21, Suna's Betrayal. Naruto and Gaara, the two Jinchuriki of their respective villages, looked at each other without a single word. The Jinchuriki of Sunagaku's Ichibi no Tanuki slowly reached up and popped the cork off his peanut-shaped gourd, dropping it to the floor carelessly. The rivaling Jinchuriki of Konohagakure's Kyubi no Kitsune placed his hand on Shiva's hilt, gripping it tightly. "Are you two ready?" Genma asked, seeing the absolute emotionless each of them carried. It was frightening. Even a Jonin like him felt pressure from this match, though that was likely due to the fact that these two had sheer power comparative to the cage. When they nodded, Genma made his announcement. The winner of this match will face off against Uzumaki Karen in the finals. Make your best performance, as the two of you have been denied any other match today due to circumstances. Hi, Genma-san. Naruto nodded. Gaara simply crossed his arms. The final match of the semi-final round will now begin. Hajime. With the single command, Genma jumped back from the two. It proved a good decision as Naruto wasted no time. A single swing of Shiva and a single spike of ice formed easily half the size of Kuji in expanded form. Gaara's sand rushed forth at the same time to form a wall, stopping the immense projectile in its tracks half a meter from the sand nin's location. Up in the cage booth, Hiruzen and the Kazekage showed equal surprise in their eyes, looking upon the sheer size of the ice construct Naruto had created. "I had no idea there was a Yuki within your forces," the Kazekage stated. "There isn't," Hiruzen replied. "Uzumaki Naruto. He is a special case. Naruto-kun has had training from not one Jonin sensei, as is usual. His skills are extremely diverse, as you will likely see throughout this battle." This, truly, was the match I most wanted to see. Back down in the arena, Gaara-san moved to a pool at his feet, his eyes coldly analyzing the small iceberg on the field before regarding his opponent once again. "That is a new trick you didn't show in the preliminaries." Smirking, the Uzumaki responded. "I didn't sit idly this month. I spent every moment training in some aspect or another for this day. Your village has given me a reason to use this power." Falling into a stance, Naruto's free hand clenched tightly into a fist before he rushed forward in a blur. Gaara watched as his sand rushed at the boy, wave after wave crashing to his location, though Naruto's massive investment into taijutsu training proved helpful as he weaved around the tendrils and missiles of sand with apparent ease. Narrowing his eyes, Gaara thrust his palm at Naruto, causing a large amount of his sand to form a 4-meter wall of sand that rushed for the Kyubi Jinchuriki. In retaliation, Naruto forced his foot into the ground, channeling a large amount of earth-nature chakra into it. Iwaken, upheaval. A large ramp of stone raised over the wave which he ran atop and jumped off. Landing behind the sand user, Naruto immediately slashed his katana right for his neck. Tendrils of sand rose up and wrapped around the blade, halting it in its tracks. Naruto glared and pulled back on his katana, scanning the area for surrounding sand coming towards him. Channeling chakra through Shiva, the sand touching it froze solid. Using that to his advantage, Naruto tore his blade from the other boy's grip and quickly jumped away from the sand which nearly formed a coffin around him. "Come Uzumaki. Prove my existence." Gaara's emotionless voice made Shiva's eyes seem warm. Holding his sword in both hands, Naruto turned it upside down so the tip was pointed to the ground. Curiously, Gaara simply watched as he plunged it fully into the concrete straight to the hilt. Hyuga, Arctic Dungeon. From the hilt, a large Fuinjutsu array formed. In an explosion of chakra, the entire arena became coated in ice with snow falling and winds howling. Settling into a stance, Naruto observed Gaara and smirked. A desert dweller like him will quickly lose concentration in an ice field. "I may have lost Shiva for the time being, but the advantage outweighs it." What is this? Gaara demanded, his shaky tone making it obvious he was already feeling the sub-zero temperatures and biting winds. "Suna doesn't generally have this, am I right? The falling flakes are called snow, the slick material coating the ground is ice, and I'm sure you know what wind is. My Arctic dungeon only works in closed spaces like this, but it helps in another way that I'll show you now." In front of Naruto, a seal appeared which dropped 6 kunai holding tags. Catching them, he jumped up and spun, throwing them in different directions. Shadow kunai clone jutsu. 6 became 6,000 that struck an enormous amount of space in the arena, though not a single one harmed Gaara thanks to his sand. Infinite summoning seal, activate. The kunai and tags disappeared in exchange for 6,000 seals placed around the arena, each relatively small. Those who attended the preliminaries knew exactly what they did though. Falling into a new stance, Naruto's palms and feet were surrounded in a faint aura of blue lightning. Behind Gaara, Naruto materialized and aimed a palm strike for the back. Sand rose up to defend him, but his Raken easily penetrated through it and sent high voltage through the boy's body, tearing apart the sand armor he wore with ease. Flashing through another seal, he appeared in front of Gaara and sent a double palm strike to his abdomen. The next strike was a kick that sent him through the air a few feet until he hit the ice floor and slid into a wall. Instead of a pained expression, as he thought Gaara would have, Naruto witnessed something far worse. Those dead eyes rose and made contact with his own to show a level of insanity he had never seen before. The Sand Jinchuriki's grin held only one feeling to it: bloodlust. The killer intent he released was palpable as sand began to swirl around him. The grain stuck to Gaara's body, starting with his right arm and torso, spreading along his legs. A tail formed next, impaling the ground below him. Uzumaki Naruto. Mother wants your blood. The screeching voice actually halted Naruto in his tracks as he realized what was happening. Looking in the stands around him, he saw feathers falling and civilians asleep. Sound and Sand Ninja fought against Leaf Shinobi. Looking back at Gaara, he saw whatever transformation he began was progressing quickly. When the Sand Jinchuriki became completely covered in sand, Naruto knew things were getting out of hand. His studies with Haido, Dansu and Jirai all included Jinchuriki in their forms. This was no doubt the miniature Ichibi transformation. Prove my existence, Uzumaki Naruto. Gaara's right arm stretched out, claw rushing for Naruto dangerously. Gathering chakra, Naruto teleported a distance away from Gaara and frowned. He has full control of his Jinchuriki abilities. What were the known Ichibi powers? Looking on at Gaara as the sand arm retracted, Naruto nodded to himself. Sand and wind, and it looks like perfect shape manipulation. I should be able to beat him. Glancing momentarily at the surroundings he faced, Naruto noted that Sand or Sound Ninja would periodically try to get down to the arena, but the Leaf Shinobi kept him mostly isolated. Likely orders from one of the higher-ups who know about my part in this invasion. Let the Jinchuriki handle the Jinchuriki. Smiling to himself that he had such faith from them, Naruto fell into his awakened stance. Let's dance, Sabaku no Gaara. With those words, he disappeared to another seal. Okaa-sama, what would you have us do? Karen asked her Jonin sensei and mother, glancing down at the arena momentarily. The woman smiled as she saw the action before looking at Suigetsu and Tuya as well. You will aid Konoha against Suna and Dato. I shall observe the fruits of your training and use this as a field test. Naruto's safety is more important than anyone else in this village, remember that. Do not coddle him though, let him fight his own battles if it can be helped. Hi, Okaa-sama. 3 swirls of water and they left. Naruto watched as Gaara's insane eyes were focused only on him and breathed in deeply, settling firmly within the void. Shifting his eyes to the bright crimson variant, he readied himself into a stance. I will not allow you or your village to cause any harm to any more of my lights in this dark world. I would sooner die than let anything happen to them. Gaara grinned maniacally. Then we will find out whose existence is stronger, won't we, Uzumaki? He asked as he thrust his right arm forward, sand shooting the limb forward at a high speed. Naruto's feet sparked with blue electricity as he quickly sidestepped it and ran forward, chakra helping him cling to the icy floor. Gaara's grin widened as his chest suddenly inflated. Phew Uten, drilling air bullets. Several bullets of wind shot right at him too fast to evade. Naruto was nowhere to be seen though, as he teleported to one of his seals near Shiva and sighed. I will lose my seals, but it is necessary, he mumbled to himself as he unsheathed Shiva from the ground, pointing the blade at Gaara as it became wrapped in an icy blue shell of icy chakra. His left hand pulled out a kunai from his pouch which began to dance with sparks that jumped between the metal and his hand. Awaken, upheaval. He kicked up a large wall of stone and then began to run up it as his feet once more became tinged with blue electricity. Gaara watched the Uzumaki run up and jump off the ramp towards him with malicious intent in his eyes and a murderous grin. He formed a claw and extended his arm forward, thinking to catch his opponent off guard. Naruto, instead, began to spin mid-air. Raken, divine retribution. A dome of blue lightning surrounded him that scattered the sand and kept it from ever touching him. With Shiva extended past even the chakra dome, it also froze chunks of the sand arm, dropping black icicles that shattered as they hit the arena's floor. As Naruto came out of the spin, he wrapped Shiva in a shell of wind chakra and dove at Gaara. Still shocked at losing one of his sand arms and having his left arm, shoulder and parts of his side exposed as his normal, human flesh, Gaara looked at the bullet which was Naruto too late. By the time that Naruto was on the ground behind him, Gaara was screaming to the heavens as at his feet was a frozen sculpture that once was his forearm and hand. The only positive aspect was that Shiva froze what was left of his appendage, preventing any blood loss from the amputation. Naruto looked at the Ichibi no Jinchuriki, noting his lack of movement and saw it as his opportunity. With Shiva in his hands, he rushed forward at the still immobile psychopath and silenced him permanently. His heart was as cold as the frozen head that now rolled across the floor of the arena. The rest of Gaara's body still stood there until the sand dissipated and the corpse fell to its knees and then face down onto the floor. Turning away from the body, Naruto walked away and sheathed his blade even as a squad of 4 roots surrounded him, in step with each stride he took. "What are the orders from Danzo-sensei?" Naruto inquired with the emotionless voice that came intuitively with the void. "To protect Konoha it is necessary to remove the threat of the Jinchuriki. Once the primary objective is complete, eradicate the invading forces to show the villages not to try this again. Destroy the Suna and Ado shinobi that you were confident in taking on." Naruto nodded. "I will do that. But first I must go see Yakumo-chan. She is powerful and will not hold back. Is there a medic among you?" At their silence, Naruto nodded. "My skills should suffice. Go and do your part, I will join in shortly," he told them, not even giving them a single iota of care where they went as he made his way to the infirmary. "We will avenge Hayate-sensei and Daihi, Kumo-chan. I promise." A certain red-headed jounin on the arena floor couldn't help but smile at his choice of words even as she unleashed several flurries upon a group of Otonin made out of pure ice. "Soon, Naruto-chan. Very soon you will be right where you belong, with Yuba-chan and her family." "Kumo-chan. Kumo-chan." Yakumo's eyelids twitched a bit as a very familiar voice reached her ears. When her chocolate-brown orbs finally opened and she registered her blonde-haired teammate standing above her, his hands coated in an emerald aura, she gasped and quickly sat upright on the gurney. "Naruto-kun," she cried, suddenly grabbing him in a tight hug. "You returned, why you didn't leave." The blonde Hyuga only gave her a look of confusion in response to her waking words. "Leave? Why would I leave? We're in the middle of the Chunin exams." It was Yakumo's turn to look confused at his statement. "Or at least, we were. Listen, Yakumo, what I'm about to tell you is very important, so I need you to listen very carefully." The artist nodded her head. "After Tuya used her genjutsu on you and knocked you out, you were brought to the infirmary here in the stadium. I ended up having my match against Gaara and killed him. Suna and Ado started an invasion in Konoha near the end of my match as well." Yakumo widened her eyes at the last bit of information that Naruto hit her with. "You mean that we're at war right now?" At his nod, the brunette frowned, clutching the blankets of her bed. "You said before the exams started that someone from Suna was probably responsible for killing Sensei and Daihi, right? Thank you for healing me. Let's make these desert dwellers see what happens when they take someone precious from us." "I knew I could count on you, Kumo-chan," the blonde said with a smile. "All right, let's go." He removed the blanket and helped her out of the small bed, and to her feet. Gaara was Suna's Ichibi Jinchuriki and was very likely a big part of their invasion plans. However, with his death, our invaders will likely try to come up with an alternate way to cause chaos. The Hokage should be keeping the Kazekage busy as well. "What should we do then?" Yakumo inquired through the lingering haze of genjutsu-induced sleep. "Well, a Jinchuriki is supposed to cause chaos for the opposing forces." Naruto trailed with a grin as his right fist became coated in all 5 base elements before slamming the fist into his open palm. "So, why don't we go show Suna and Ado why they should have taken Hyuga Naruto and his team into account when they made their plans?" Yakumo felt a small smile forming on her lips at the show in his short speech before slowly nodding. "Daihi did say we were a demonic duo thanks to our tenants. I believe we should show them the power of the Kyuubi and did." The two would make their way from the infirmary and begin walking back towards the stadium floor when something caught Naruto's eye. "What is it, Naruto-kun?" Yakumo wondered as she saw him staring off to their left, killer intent suddenly flowing from his body. "Yakumo, look. It's the blonde girl with the fan. The sister of the Jinchuriki." Yakumo let her eyes drift over to the bed as he pointed her out, and immediately widened her eyes. She saw Tamari laying down, obviously in pain after her match due to the lacerations covering her body from wind techniques. Karen fought her in the semifinals. She absorbed the wind from her fan and sent it back at her with a set of seals. Naruto nonchalantly explained. "Do you think she might be able to tell us who did it?" Yakumo wondered aloud as a righteous fire began glowing behind her eyes. "She is the daughter of the Kazekage. She probably had a part in the invasion and even knows things other ninja wouldn't. We can use her." Approaching the corner infirmary bed where the blonde lay helpless to her injuries, Naruto settled himself firmly into the void with his signature crimson, Hyuga eyes. This did not go unnoticed. What? Stay away from me, Tamari demanded as she saw the two approaching. With Sunagaku Shinobi invading, she was likely a prime target to serve as a hostage or even a good revenge killing against the Kazekage. She reached for her fan, but looking around she couldn't find it anywhere. Yakumo walked to the spot Tamari thought she placed her weapon and plucked it out of thin air, its existence only visible after she touched it. Genjutsu. What do you want with me? You are the daughter of the Kazekage. Naruto commented, voice as cold as his katana blade after killing Gaara. I bet you're rather important to that man. My father won't allow my being captured. Stop him. You couldn't use me as a bargaining chip, and if you kill me, he'll level this village. That is, considering whatever is left of it after he's finished destroying it today. However, witnessing the cold smile on the brunette Genjutsu user's lips and the very empty eyes of the blonde Hyuga, she swallowed. Damn these injuries. There's no way I can do anything with this holding me back. They took my fan too. You are misunderstanding the situation, Tamari. Yakumo replied, holding the fan like a staff. She leaned against it as she looked into the teal eyes that didn't quite believe her previous post. We don't care about you, we just want some information that you probably have. You see, 2 of our very close friends died this week from injuries inflicted by either a user of wind ninjutsu or wind-based kenjutsu, and seeing as how auto shinobi use sound and not wind. Well, I'm sure you can understand why we suspect Suna. You want me to rat out one of our soldiers? She asked cautiously, but curiosity getting the best of her. We'll even spare you. If you can. Naruto began. It says Kiba told you. These 2 may not have been related by blood, but they were family to me after my only family died. My sensei, and my best friend that was my brother in all but blood. Can you even understand the rage that comes with learning your brother died, and you couldn't do one single thing to help? Tamari looked away, imagining what she might do if Kankuro was killed. How would she react in that situation, one that was a very real possibility? He might have been an annoying brat who played with dolls instead of making friends, but he was still important to her. Then there was Gaara. He was psychotic and threatened to kill them almost hourly, but he was still family. She contemplated it. Then finally, Baki, she whispered. What was that? Yakumo asked, standing a bit straighter off the fan. Baki. My sensei, he killed 2 people this week while gathering information from a spy. His signature jutsu is the wind sword, so he's probably the one who did it. He's also one of the top jounin from Suna, so I can't promise that you'll survive a confrontation with him. Tamari informed, her voice soft and slightly subdued. Naruto and Yakumo shared a glance before the blonde nodded. In response, Yakumo tossed the fan to Tamari, which she barely caught. Huh? She looked up after glancing down at her prized weapon. A deal is a deal. We won't kill you, but if you don't get out of here soon then someone else might. I suggest you take a soldier pill and limp yourself out of this place. If we find out that you hurt anyone of our village after we let you go though. Naruto left the thread hanging as sparks and flames danced violently along his fist. We'll let you use your imagination, Yakumo stated, flashing a very cheery smile before they walked away from the Sabaku heiress. Naruto-kun, do you happen to know who Baki is? Yes I do, he's listed in the bingo book. There it reads that he's a master of wind and an accomplished swordsman with skills in both long and short-range attacks. Tamari, it's right, there is a lot of risk in trying to take him down, but we have to succeed for Daihei-sensei's sake. I've had a lot of training this last month and so have you. It has to be enough. It just has to. This might very well be the only chance we get. Yakumo hesitated only a moment before nodding. You're right, she agreed. This might be our only opportunity and we need to take it. Do you have any idea how we can find him though? We know what he looks like, but there are so many people fighting out in the village that you can hear the noise, and feel the tremors of battle, even from inside the Colosseum. Then we just have to take down Suna and Auto Shinobi as we go until we find him, won't we? He asked rhetorically while unsheathing Shiva. Yakumo looked at the blade as it exuded an icy mist and nodded once, turning her eyes to her last teammate. Let's do it, Naruto-kun. Outside Kanahagakura Coliseum. Uzumaki-san, are you ready now? The voice surprised both Naruto and Yakumo as they walked outside of the stadium. From the shadows appeared one of the root nin, who regarded the girl. Kurama-sama, I trust you are able to fight? Thanks to Naruto-kun. Who are you? She wondered. The blank Anbu mask was unfamiliar. I was taught by a man named Shimura Dansu over the last month. Naruto explained to her. He is the leader of a top-secret branch of Anbu that most ninja never even hear about, so you can't say anything to anyone about it. He assigned a squad of them to assist me today during the exams. The Hokage and Danzu-sensei have been preparing for this invasion since the second exam. Yakumo frowned at that. "You're sure we can trust these Anbu?" Leaning close to his ear, she was whispering. "We're planning on taking out a Jounin, won't they try to stop us?" The blonde simply shook his head in the negative. "You're certain?" "Trust me, Yakumo." He looked at the masked man then. "We're looking for one of the Sunagakure Jounin named Baki. He was responsible for the deaths of both Gekko Hayate and Funikusu-daihi. Also, Sabaku no Tamari is inside the infirmary right now. Capturing her could only grant an advantage if the worst happens." "I understand, Uzumaki-san. Sanju will take care of her and Roku has already left to track Baki down. Juyuni and I are at your disposal. Until they return, shall I inform you of Danzu-sama's message?" Naruto nodded. "He wishes for you to understand that we will not aid you in any fights unless you are in critical condition. He has also stated that your rank as a shinobi is not all that is at stake at this time. We shall observe your performance throughout this battle, and he stated that there may be something more you can gain if your progress is as far as he desires it to be." Naruto didn't quite understand what the root, he was pretty sure she was Nana Hyuga, meant, but he nodded anyways. Knowing the cripple, it was something important though. "What do we do until this Roku returns, Naru?" Yakumo asked curiously as she glanced around at the mayhem that completely filled the village. "Well, we'll let Roku handle the tracking. He's a Hyuga. Until then, we should see where we can help out the village, and completely tear down the sand, wouldn't you agree?" Yakumo let the statement sink in before nodding with a smile. Her sclera began to bleed a light brown color as her pupae dilated until they were the size of pins, her irides matching the odd sclera she now possessed. At the same time that Yakumo's odd transformation took place, Naruto's own eyes changed as well. His pupae became elongated black slits while his irides shifted to the color of blood. The signature whisker-like markings on his cheeks became more pronounced as well. "It's time the demonic duo that Daihi was so proud of to show themselves," he stated. "It and Kyubi will finally get to taste a little blood." The root agents that were left with the two, for the first time in a long while, finally felt an emotion at the sheer volume of killer intent that two Junon before them were releasing, not to mention the foul chakra that purposely pulsated around the both of them. It wasn't fear. No, that didn't even begin to touch the new emotion the pair embodied and exuded. It was terror, pure, condensed horror given flesh. Only through Dansu's training were they able to stay stoic and watch as Yakumo and Naruto jumped off at speeds much higher than any Junon should be allowed to possess, nearly disappearing from sight entirely before Juyuni and Nana Hyuga chased after them. They still had a mission to see through, after all. As the final two living members of Team Hayate hopped through the rooftops, they came to the scene of two very exhausted Chunin barely standing with kunai in their hands. The pair was completely surrounded by 8 Suna shinobi, some armed, some forming a hand seal, but all with murder glazing their eyes. Without hesitation, Naruto dove into the fray. Shiva was no longer giving off a soft frost, it now held a layer of cold, pitch-black energy. As he made his way to the ground, he threw his blade and impaled one of the Sunin in through the chest and into the wall of a building, pinning him there. The body immediately began to freeze over, turning black as the cells were frozen completely. The other 7 were searching for who threw the blade, but Yakumo had already used a genjutsu to make her partner invisible and his movements inaudible. Taking advantage of this, Naruto activated his awaken and kicked the ground, causing a slab of the concrete floor to shoot up before he slammed both of his palms into it. Another 2 were crushed from the quick consistency of his actions. The final 5 turned their eyes to him just as the genjutsu was dispelled, but with it the Kyubi's chakra bared down on them with full intensity. Yakumo took their fear as an opportunity to cast another genjutsu. She focused on one of the ninja who was exuding the most fear before causing her to see a very detailed illusion of the Shinigami. She screamed just as the Shinigami removed the knife from its mouth and plunged it into her heart. Thanks to Yakumo's reality-warping bloodline technique, the woman's chest appeared to have a stab wound and began to actually bleed from her chest as she fell to her face and hit the ground with a dead thud, wheezing and gasping for air. As this happened, Naruto had gripped the hilt of Shiva and ripped it from the frozen body of his first target, causing the body to shatter in pieces into the dirt. Sparks lanced over his feet as lightning chakra sped up his movements. The remaining 4 ninja lost their heads and parts of their torso as he sped in a straight line with enough force to bypass all of the limited resistance their muscle and flesh may have offered. He then sheathed the weapon in a single, smooth action as the Kyubi chakra receded enough that the surviving Konoha could breathe and retain their breath. Yakumo jumped down to join him as Naruto approached the Chunin. "Are you two alright?" They nodded fearfully despite his compassionate tone of voice and caring smile. He had expected those reactions after letting the fox place influence on him like that. Haido had warned Yakumo and him of this sort of thing. Though tapping into the full powers of their darker sides was a boost that placed them at levels of chakra and illusions respectively that very little ninja could match, it also was walking a razor-thin line. The first risk was giving in fully to Kyuubi or id, which meant all that power had a chance to be used to kill anyone around them. The second risk was ignorance of those around, the fear that could come with showcasing abilities others didn't understand. Hyuga had helped them gain a measure of control over just a slim fraction of these powers, but it was still difficult to rein in the influence and the results. "I think you two should take a soldier pill and help evacuate the civilians," Yakumo pointed out since Naruto seemed to be a bit lost in thought. "They can use all the help they can get." The two nodded quickly and, after following the Kurama heir's prescription, they ran off in the direction of the Hokage monument. "You okay, Naru?" Yakumo asked with concern deeply ingrained in her voice, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. He blinked, as if only just now realizing he wasn't paying attention before giving her a smile. "Yeah, just remembering Hyuga's warning about utilizing our demonic forms. The fear in their eyes even though we just saved their lives. It just reminded me why he said to only reveal them in front of people we believed we could trust." His eyes seemed to shimmer, dying down to a light shade of pink briefly before suddenly becoming a deeper red than ever before. "But I refuse to allow something as petty as someone's personal opinion to stop us from helping preserve what was important to Gigi, to Daihi, and to Sensei." As he spoke, his canine teeth seemed to extend a bit more and his claws elongated at the tips on their own. "We have to show these ninja true fear, the sort that only demons are capable of instilling into people." Yakumo nodded back to her partner with a grin as she allowed more of its power to willingly flow inside her. Though her alternate personality wasn't exactly a demonic entity like Naruto's Kyuubi, it still held a large portion of her bloodline's ability. It was by allowing the personalities of herself and id to merge little by little that she could tap into it. As she did so, an illusion shimmered into existence of her with horns growing out of the sides of her head and her skin tone became a slight gray. Thanks to the Kurama bloodline, the genjutsu became real. Together, Kitsune and Oni took off to the rooftops once more. "That is. What are they?" Suigetsu muttered from between his sisters as they watched the two hop their way across the village. "I know that Kasan said they were demons in combat, but that's just ridiculous." "I'm beginning to see why she said we shouldn't help them unless they needed it," Karen commented. "We might just get in the way, but let's follow them some more and see if we need to do anything." Tuya and Suigetsu nodded as they chased after their cousin and his teammate. "I just fucking hope they don't ever become our enemies," Tuya muttered as they sped through the village, the trio watching as the demonic duo continued to kill the invaders without remorse, without regret and, worst yet, without resistance. Shimura Dansa found himself walking the streets of Konoha in the aftermath of the joint invasion of Sand and Sound. His cane tapped against the floor resoundingly with every step while his uncovered eye looked at the damages this part of the market district had sustained. While it was far from being another Kyuubi attack, buildings were littered with holes, the road had large gouges where there were none before and it was so soon after the enemies had been pushed back that corpses of shinobi from both sides and Konoha civilians littered the public space. He was sure there were even more inside the buildings that he couldn't see. It had been a victory for Konoha. They took out the Ichibi and captured the Kazekage's daughter thanks to Naruto. Of course, she was in the care of Root and no one but himself knew she had been captured. The Kazekage himself had been killed by Orochimaru, leaving the village leaderless. The next in line would have been Baki. But, reverse time skip, 6 hours ago, market district rooftops. Naruto and Yakumo were jumping through the rooftops in search of a very particular person. That was when Naruto's Crimson Byakugan picked up on something and he motioned for the girl to follow him. On one of the streets, they could see that the very Jounin they were searching for was down there along with the last of the Sabaku siblings and 2 Autonin. In their demonic transformations, the two make quite the impact when they launched from their positions and took out the Autonin on their way down. Baki and Kankuro jumped back and looked at the monsters before them. It took the man a while to figure it out, but when he did, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and his teammate, "Stay behind me, Kankuro." The air shimmered in front of the veiled man as a katana made of wind chakra formed. "I didn't think I would get this chance." "What brings you straight to me?" Yakumo was the one who answered. "The death of our sensei and friend at your hands." It was full of hate and loathing, the same as Naruto's eyes. "You won't make it out of this village alive." The blonde didn't speak. He was content to settle himself within the void as he drew Shiva and took a stance. Baki frowned as he tried to get an estimate on how powerful they were. The Uzumaki was a Jinchuriki and killed Gaara, but he didn't know much about the girl aside from her clan. She looked even more demonic than her teammate, with the Oni-like appearance and psychopathic grin. Taking his own stance and feeling Kankuro mold chakra behind him, He knew this wouldn't be like fighting normal Genin. He would not underestimate these two. Kurasu rushed past the Jounin, right for Yakumo. She didn't move a centimeter as it did. She didn't have to. Naruto slashed Shiva to his left and the Suna shinobi bore witness as all the chakra strands were severed by the blade. Focusing, Yakumo forced her will on reality, casting an illusion on the chakra of the world itself. In that moment, the puppet slowly began to stand up, moving of its own accord and standing at Yakumo's side. This is true puppetry, exerting your will on an object without the need for strands, strings or wires. Kankuro just looked wide-eyed at his former tool while Baki grimaced. Forming two fingers with his offhand, he quickly launched 6 blades of wind using his chakra without the need for hand seals or a vocal command. Naruto responded in kind by slamming his foot into the ground for an awaken upheaval. The wall stopped the attack, though it crumbled under the offensive power behind them. "Yakumo, let's take care of him." She nodded as the two rushed forward at Baki. The Jounin quickly evaded Shiva's thrust with a sidestep, then rolled backwards to dodge several shuriken that formed in the air from seemingly nowhere. A slash from the katana sent deadly icicles his way which he cut down with his blade, which only left him half a second to parry Shiva itself as Naruto rushed forward behind them. He couldn't even take advantage of the opening due to Karasu clicking in through the air with its hand blades aimed at him. He felt himself being pushed back once more and detested it, but loathed the idea of death more. While he had focused on Karasu, Baki had lost sight of the humans and frantically searched out their chakra. Unfortunately, they did something he didn't think was possible. Instead of suppressing it to an undetectable level, they saturated the air with so much of it, he didn't know where to even begin attacking. Cursing under his breath, his focus was broken enough that the call of an attack made him jump. Hyuga, Blizzard Rush. Baki looked up from where the call came and widened his eyes. Naruto was riding atop an immense-sized spike. The flat end was easily twice the size of that expanded Akimichi air while it tapered off to a tip dangerous enough to kill. If that weren't enough, the blue construct glowed with a dangerous aura and core that he recognized as a Jinchuriki's Yuki. Quickly using a replacement with some rubble, he got to safety. Only too late did he realize his mistake. Kankuro. The spike drove itself halfway through its 10-meter length into the ground, Naruto standing atop its surface and looking at Baki with those merciless eyes. Baki hadn't particularly cared for Gaara, if he were honest. When Kankuro was crushed before his eyes though, he felt something moist in his eyes trailing. Killer intent began to build within the man as he glared at the Jinchuriki who smirked. "Are you starting to understand what you did to us?" Naruto wondered. When Baki opened his mouth to speak, he only gasped and looked down at his stomach, where a familiar katana blade was poking out. Looking back at Naruto, he saw that he had been replaced with Yakumo. The real Naruto spoke up. "2 of your students are gone and the village has your 3rd in custody. Die with the knowledge that you caused this. Know that if you hadn't taken away the few lights in my world that I wouldn't have done this." With that, Naruto pulled his blade out and swung quickly, taking off the Jounin's head in a similar way to Gaara's. Naruto looked at Yakumo and smiled. The 2 of them were happy they had punished the killer of their family. There wasn't much time to celebrate though, as they quickly left again. There was work to be done, sand to be swept away and sound to silence. Present. I knew that Naruto-chan was capable of such a thing, but it is still pleasant to hear it from my reliable children. Karen, Tuya and Suigetsu stood before their mother, having relayed their account of the fight against Baki they witnessed. "The Kurama girl is interesting me more and more as well." "If you thought that was intriguing, we haven't even started, Okaa-sama," Tuya remarked with a shake of her head. "Those 2. I don't even know how I possibly beat the girl in our battle." This intrigued her mother, who motioned for the siblings to continue their tale. Reverse time skip, Naruto and Yakumo. After leaving Baki's corpse on the floor and Kankuro crushed beneath the gargantuan construct, the pair continued. They achieved their objective, but they were nowhere near ready to let these insects who took their family away go free. Still, that didn't mean they knew what to do just then. "Where should we go, Naruto?" Yakumo wondered, noting his eyes were a very bright red. "It seems like the villagers are already being evacuated," he replied. "Once that is done, we'll be free to really let loose without threat of collateral. Still, it seems like the Sound think that attacking the hospital might be a good idea. What do you say we give them a little surprise?" Yakumo smiled at the suggestion, which had a chilling effect when combined with her Oni-like features. "I think that's a wonderful idea." Yakumo, who may have been allowing it a little too much control, responded. It didn't take long for the 2 to appear on the hospital's rooftop. When they did, they had front row seats to several Ado and Sunanin who had showed up and outnumbered the one Konoha Chunin guard who was left alive. Even then, He appeared to be barely hanging on to life if his grievous wounds were any indication. Scanning him over with his Byakugan, Naruto sighed, knowing his skill in healing would not be nearly enough to do anything for him. They just keep taking everything from us. Naruto muttered as his eyes flashed an ethereal blue before reverting back to their glowing crimson. He took off from the edge of the roof with such force that the cement cracked visibly. Yakumo wasn't far behind him. From a distant vantage, the Uzumaki siblings eyed the encounter. I don't think we'll have to worry about helping them. Suigetsu muttered with a low whistle. Blood was painting the pavement in such quantities that the boy wasn't sure how his stomach was so calm. His younger sister wasn't so lucky. Oh, having second thoughts about the prince? He asked Karen. Not. I just didn't expect this. Karen turned from the scene and adjusted her glasses. We do need to be more careful though. Both of her siblings looked at her with curiosity. If this is how those two are going to react to things like strangers that happen to share a birth village with them dying, then what would happen if my Mirage Seal was discovered? I really don't want to think about having to deal with the two of them turning on us. You worry too much, Karen. Tuya replied. Kasama taught you Fuinjutsu and he's completely self-taught. There's no way he could see through your illusions, even with the Byakugan. Remember that she told us herself that even Naruto's grandfather couldn't see through it back in Uzu. If a pure-blood Hyuga with a lifetime of Juoken training couldn't detect it, then there's no way Naruto could. Karen pursed her lips but nodded. Okay, I suppose you're right. It should be fine if not even someone like Hito could see through it, and his feelings lasted for Okasama until his death. The redhead looked back at the ground level and had to force her bile back as she saw the way Naruto tore through humans with claws of some sort of red chakra. That wasn't Iwaken. Naruto was getting closer to his dream. Karen just hoped everything she'd worked for didn't backfire. She would simply need to have faith in Okasama's plan. Present day. Jiraiya found himself wandering the streets of the village in the aftermath of Orochimaru's failed invasion. His sensei, a man he had thought of as his own father, had finally passed from the earth. Even then, he had to make one more sacrifice for Konoha, and the way he did it. He was beginning to loathe the Shiki Fujin. First it had taken his student and now his sensei. Next thing he knew. No, Naruto couldn't use it. He would not lose his godson. That said, it's impressive, isn't it? The Sani nearly jumped as he heard the familiar voice. Turning, he noted it was Dansu. How a cripple was able to always sneak up on Konohagakura's spymaster, he would never know. Jiraiya assumed that the man once known as the Darkness of Shinobi was referring to the immense ice construct Naruto had created to deal with Baki. It was quite a monument to his achievement, but not unexpected given his reserves that he could create something of that size. I won't deny that. Did you teach him how to do that? The frog summoner wondered, but wasn't surprised when he shook his head. Neither did I. I wonder how he learned how to do something only a Yuki should be able to teach him then. Dansu hummed quietly before speaking. Where he learned, it matters not. What does matter is what we're going to do. While we haven't always seen eye to eye, we both only wish the best for Konoha. Right now, I think that hinges on our young ward. He's lost his team aside from Yakumo. He's lost his grandfather. Yakumo is already unanchored to the village. I wouldn't put it past her clan to simply leave if she requested. If she's the only anchor he has to this village and he is hers, we must ensure that we find something else to keep the Uzumaki a Konoha shinobi. Jiraiya frowned and turned away from the elder, looking at the construct before sighing. You know I can't be that anchor. I still have to deal with the network and with this invasion. I'm sure Kumo and Iwa might try something soon. You aren't nearly emotional enough to do it either. I assume you have something in mind? Dansu nodded. You need to find Tsunade. She is the last relative of his that is loyal to this village. If we can get her here, I'm certain she'll take him in. If she does so, then a sense of loyalty and responsibility should keep him here. This may be our last chance, Jiraiya. In case you haven't noticed, there's a girl from Kuza who has been batting her lashes a bit too much at our Jinchuriki and he's taking the bait. While I would love nothing more than to take her out of the picture, it would only push him further away. We must do all we can to make sure he doesn't leave and doesn't hold a grudge against the village. Jiraiya looked at the sky with a sigh. Forgive me, Minato. I didn't want to manipulate your son like this, but he's been dealt such a horrible hand we have too. Hopefully Tsunade doesn't make it worse with her rotten luck. Looking back at the veteran, Jiraiya nodded. Okay, it seems we don't have a choice. Still, how do we get her to come back? Are we leveraging him even though she thought he was dead? I hear there's a vacancy in the tower. Let's get her to fill it. Jiraiya widened his eyes at that. The fact that Dansu was giving up a shot at the hat and robes really showed the white-haired sage how serious this was to the man. I see. Getting Tsunade Hyme to accept the position might be difficult, but if I reveal Naruto then I think she'll do it. Still, it means I'll probably need to take him with me. I'll just need to figure out how to entice him. If I may, Jiraiya? Dansu offered. I think taking both of them with you and heavily implying the possibility of Tsunade teaching them might be a good route to go. She has things that would benefit both Naruto and Yakumo, and I don't think they would pass up on even the chance to study under a Sannin. Jiraiya thought over it before finding no fault in the logic. That works for me. Do you know where they are? I'd like to get started as soon as possible given the severity of the situation. I think you might find them at Naruto's house in the Hyuga compound. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Dansu was left the site once more alone. Smiling to himself, Dansu leaned against his cane. Assuming that imbecile can do at least this right, my heir will be in a very good place to lead both Root and the village. Just don't screw this up, pervert. Naruto's house. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Yakumo spoke gratefully as he handed her a cup of tea and sat next to her on the couch in his living room. They had given up their demonic forms and blood-soaked bodies in exchange for a clean set of clothes after a shower. Naruto was donning a blue haori tied by a white obi and a pair of teal hakama pants. The haori bore the Uzumaki spiral on its back. Yakumo, on the other hand, was in a red kimono with white edges tied by a red obi. Daihi, Naruto and herself had spent so many days training or staying over at each other's houses over the years that they had taken to keeping a few changes of clothing at all three compounds. The two were silent for a few minutes, drinking their tea, before the heiress spoke again. It still hurts. Naruto looked at his friend empathetically as she spoke. He could see tears gathering in her eyes. We killed Baki and avenged Daihi-kun and Sensei, but I feel so empty. Naruto nodded his head, putting his tea down. I know. I still miss Gigi, and this just makes it all worse. Yakumo didn't know what she was hoping for, but it wasn't that. Her tea was, luckily, already on the table because it became far too much for the girl. She couldn't even let it take over to save her. Even placing her face in her hands didn't keep the tears from hitting Naruto's wood floor. The blonde didn't even think about it and wrapped his arms around Yakumo, holding her close. He had the void to help with his pain, but Yakumo didn't have anything but it. It had already killed hundreds to sate its anger, but it wouldn't help Yakumo. He knew that. Feeling the warmth of Naruto's body, Yakumo embraced him back, holding onto him as tightly as she could. Daihi was gone. Sensei was gone. Her parents were gone. Naruto was still here though, and she would not let him go. She had to protect something. With no sounds except for Yakumo's quiet sobs, they just stayed like that. Road to D Country. On the road outside of Konoha, three figures made their way west: Jiraiya of the Sannin, Uzumaki Naruto, and Kurama Yakumo. Jiraiya had, indeed, convinced the pair of them to accompany him on his quest to find Tsunade. The fact of the matter was that Yakumo and Naruto more wanted to get out of the village, and any memories it might bring up, than anything. He didn't even have to bring up anything about possibly learning from Tsunade. While he felt a little guilty about everything, he was mostly just happy that they were accompanying him. Hopefully he could bring Tsunade Hyme back and keep Naruto grounded in Konoha all at once. If he was able to do that, he could head back out on his spy master duties. And possibly do more research in the process. When Jiraiya started giggling, the two Shin'an behind him gave him an odd look before slowing a bit to put distance between themselves and him. What is wrong with that man? Yakumo wondered with a glance at Naruto, who she knew had trained under him for a time. The blonde had told Yakumo everything about what he had done in that month-long training regiment with Team 8, with Jiraiya and with Danzo. He's strong, but I think he's also insane. The blonde commented in return. There's something about S-rank shinobi and insanity, apparently. I mean, look at my guy. Yakumo looked ready to say something, but held back. What is it? I think we might have also reached that point, she told him, tapping her temple, to emphasize it, and looking at his stomach. That made the boy chuckle a little. True, the two of them might be well on their way to both S-rank status and insanity with the way things were going. The feeling of dual anxious humor and tense patience for the inevitable left Naruto very quickly, however. Looking at Yakumo, he noted that she had her arms wrapped around his own and was squeezing rather snugly. Shh, don't say anything, she pleaded. Just to make sure that I don't lose you too. For me, fantasy and reality aren't so different. It still doesn't feel real, even after so long. I just want to make sure that I don't lose you on top of everything else that's happened recently. Looking at the heiress, Naruto smiled as she grabbed his hand, intertwining their fingers. It seems I'm not the only one that was hurt. Rather, I didn't know to what extent this was affecting Yakumo. Why didn't I notice before? As the thought crossed his mind, The blonde winced. There was some sort of pressure against his head. Ignoring it as some sort of headache, he decided to focus on walking so as to not disturb Yakumo. That line of thought quickly was thrown out the window, however, as it seemed each time he thought of Yakumo that same pounding came back with more force. When did he end up on the ground? Was someone saying something? Looking up at the sky, Naruto couldn't help but notice that Yakumo and Jiraiya were above him and moving their lips. No sound came out though. What was going on? And wasn't it noon? Why was the sky getting so dark? As black crept around the edges of his vision, the blonde stopped thinking and just gave in to the bliss of unconsciousness. At least the pounding and pressure had stopped. Root Underground Headquarters. Danzo-sama, she is awake. The supposedly crippled man made no signal that he had heard the disembodied voice that seemed to come from 3 separate places in his office and finished reading over the last paragraph of a report he'd received on events of the attempted invasion of Konoha. Setting the page aside, the elderly shinobi stood from his chair and pushed it back in before walking out of the room. The stone hallway outside of his office was barren of any decoration aside from a highly detailed scrawl etched into the concrete itself. The illumination seal was one of Danzo's personal favorites that the Uzumaki had crafted, and getting Tobirama-sensei to teach it to him was one of the first steps he'd taken into Fuinjutsu. It was very useful for an underground base, such as this. Walking through the hall, he eventually came upon a large, steel door. Standing before the door was a single person. "Good evening, Sai. Full, let me know that she's awake. Has there been any sort of trouble?" The pale youth shook his head silently. Good. I'll see if I can't get something useful out of this encounter. I'd like the scroll." The boy handed Danzo a sealing scroll which he placed inside his sleeve before Sai opened the door for him. Stepping inside the room, he watched as the illumination seals within suddenly flickered to life at his presence. Temari, to her credit, immediately leveled a glare upon Danzo. He only gave the blonde a calm smile. "Hello there, last of the Subaku line." His greeting seemed to have thrown her off as the glare disappeared. Her eyes widened as the words reached her brain and she processed them. "Orochimaru of the Sannin slew your father and disguised himself as Raza during the tournament 3 days ago. Your brothers were both killed during the invasion. It seems you are the last and final member of your clan, the sole holder of Sunagakura's variation of the Jiten and heiress to the Sunagakura ruling family. I hope you can understand the power holding you in one of my cells grants me, and why it would be in your best interest to do as I say." Disgust had shifted to a look of distress, which deepened into despair, then desperation and finally determination as that glare returned in full force. "Why should I? If my family really is dead, there's nothing I can gain from anything. I don't have anything to lose either. Just leave me rotting here." Danzo nodded his head in agreement. "That's true, you seemingly have nothing to lose. Your brothers died in the line of duty, your father was betrayed and your sensei was killed in revenge." Temari seemed to shift at the last line. "Oh, starting to feel a little guilt over ratting out your sensei?" Temari turned her nose up, not even looking at the man anymore. It was interesting that she had any pride left, considering she was chained to the floor without any clothes on. Surely, sleeping like that without any protection from the concrete floor rubbing her skin raw had to have had some ramifications. Still, Danzo would break that from her. "That isn't making me any more likely to help you, you know. If anything, I should cause you as much trouble as I can, for the memory of my family and sensei." Temari retorted harshly. The Konoha elder again nodded, as if he was agreeing with her. "That's true. Still, I should find some way to get use out of you. If you won't do as I say, and you'll be rebellious in your every action as some sort of penance to your dead clan, then I suppose I'll have no other choice but to contact the Raikage and inform him I'd like to make deal with him. I'm sure he'd love nothing more than to get his hands on Sunagakura's Jiten, and create an entire clan of them within the next few decades. It is, after all, every woman's dream to become a mother, is it not?" The blonde kunoichi widened her eyes at the threat. Just the thought of Kumo shinobi having their way with her, as they were infamously known for doing to female prisoners of war, had her arms unconsciously moving to hug herself, as if it would offer any protection in that sort of circumstance. Forcing herself to return to that calm demeanor, Temari pushed her hands back to her sides and kept contact with Danzo's lone eye. "You wouldn't dare do that. That would put Kumo in an advantageous position. Baki-sensei told me about the influential members of Konoha's council and he said that you, above all else, strive for every action you take to benefit Konoha. Why would you sell away a bloodline to another village, let alone the village most likely to usurp your own if given half an opportunity?" Danzo smiled to the girl and walked closer to her, his contempt tapping against the concrete audibly with each step. Finally, when he was in front of her, he knelt down until they were at eye level. "Morale is a dangerous thing, Young lady, he stated, seemingly randomly. If you went back to Suna, well, you become an individual that they can fall behind, a banner of Sunagaku nationalism that might interrupt the plans I have for my successor. However, if you are sent to Kumo and it is discovered that the last princess of Suna is nothing more than a means of production in the mountains, then whatever is left of Sunagaku's fleeting sense of independence will be quashed completely. If the last descendant of their precious first Kazekage that united the desert clans as one is nothing more than a sex slave, then what can they possibly stand for? In fact, shouldn't they feel lucky that they're even still alive and well, given Konoha's protection of them despite their treasonous actions? If I happen to get a few bloodlines of my own for my root, well, then that's just icing on the cake, isn't it? Danzo never raised his voice, he never raised a hand and never moved in a threatening way, but the girl began retreating away from him as he spoke in that cold, emotionless voice. He spoke of her potential life as a baby-making factory the same way one might comment on the weather. That's what terrified her. That and the look in his eyes. It wasn't like her father, or like Gaara, or like Baki or Kankuro. Those eyes had no emotion in them, only conviction. She knew, in that moment, that he would go through with it because. You're right, my every action is for the benefit of my village. No matter what I do with you, it will bring an advantage to my home. What form that advantage takes and what happens for the rest of your life doesn't matter to me, so long as I'm certain it's for the best of this village. Because he was absolutely certain whatever he thought was right, and she was powerless to do anything about it. Danzo looked at her terrified form before pulling the scroll from his sleeve. There is some clothing in there. I will begin to assess your skills in 2 hours to determine whether you'll be of any use working for me, or if it's more advantageous to send you off to that imbecile in the mountains for a better candidate. He turned around without looking at her and began walking to the door. If I were you, I would do my best to not be a disappointment. Sai opened the door for Danzo, who left with a few parting words. Prove yourself useful, however, and you'll be able to continue your life as a kunoichi, though it will be working for me and not in the sands. I'll be looking forward to our appointment, Sabaku no Tamari. Impress upon me why I should choose to keep you here with all of your capability. With that, the door shut and the illumination seals shut off. Even though it couldn't be seen, Tamari's quiet sobs were easily heard in the silence. Too bright. Turn off the sun, Amaterasu-sama. Naruto begged. Slowly opening his eyes, he sat up to try and get his bearings. Looking around, the boy grimaced. Oh boy! Why am I here of all places? Sighing, he got to his feet. The surroundings were familiar, but not desired. When was the last time I got pulled in here? The Hyuga found himself at the bottom of a large set of stone steps that led to a grand temple. A pair of life-size lion statues guarded the entrance, each with their mouths wide open and fangs bared. Marble columns lined the front of the temple, holding the pristine roof from crashing down. Doors that reached further than even his Byakugan could see stood wide open before him. Ornate carvings on the door depicted various scenes that he recognized. Here, Hidojiji was teaching him the Awaken. There, his team was running from Genma's summon. Over there, he met Karen for the first time. In that area, Yakumo and him were in their demonic forms fighting Baki. Every significant event in his life was carved into this door, and an obscuring fog covered the supermajority of the door as it went up. Little brat. Come to disturb my nap again, have you? The wind howled from inside the temple in what vaguely sounded like words. Steeling himself and settling into the void, Naruto stepped inside the temple. He would need all the fortitude he could get for what would surely come next. Within the temple itself, the walls stretched quite far to either side. Similar to the door, there were an enormous number of stained glass windows depicting various scenes along them. There, Naruto received Shiva. On the other wall, he was being taught medical ninjutsu by Hana. Further down, he attended Hido's funeral. Everything about the temple was designed to remind him of the past, to keep all of his best and darkest moments at the forefront of his mind. At the furthest end of the temple, the windows no longer existed. That was its territory. An all-consuming darkness enveloped the temple from that point such that it was impossible to tell whether it was a meter, a kilometer or an infinitely expanding section that penetrated into oblivion. The blonde was inclined towards the third one. Standing just in front of the darkness, he looked up. There, a pair of eyes stared back from the abyss. Bright and crimson, with slit pupils, it was none other than the Kyubi no Kitsune. Hello again, Fox. Naruto greeted with a calm he didn't feel thanks to the void. Did you bring me here? The sturdy temple shook with slight vibrations in the air that Naruto realized was laughter. If you didn't, then who did? Do you not recall what occurred in the outside world? The wind once more asked. Naruto was so close to the QB this time that he felt he might be crushed beneath the air pressure from its voice alone. Still, he pressed on. It was the only thing that would know why he was here. You are unconscious right now. Someone has been intervening in your chakra flow. I don't like that. There was another seal on you that was affecting you, and it was messing with my own. It wouldn't have freed me, but was restricting me further. As such, I took the opportunity to destroy it the moment I found it. What do you mean another seal? What was it doing? Do you know how it got there? The QB narrowed its eyes. I apologize for my rudeness, but it seems of the utmost importance. Would it not be prudent to take care of the one who did this so it doesn't happen again? Those eyes closed for a moment. When they reopened, the wind resumed. You have a point, human. Very well. I can't actually be sure what the seal was doing, if I'm honest. It definitely was reacting to various vixen around you though. That other Uzumaki girl. Around her it would give a soft pulse. That made it difficult to track it down. I managed to find it just now though because it reacted to the painter. It was violent. If towards the Uzumaki it was a soothing elixir, towards the painter it was an earthquake. Naruto was beginning to remember the last bit of his consciousness now. There was that migraine he started feeling when Yakumo got closer to him. I think I understand what you mean. That does sound like a strange seal to me. You destroyed it completely though, right? The wind then made a sound that was very similar to a snort. What do you take me for, human? Some sort of amateur, an imbecile? Of course I did. That thing was bad for me as well. Now, listen here, brat. I did this for you, and I expect some repayment. I want you to tear apart whoever did this, limb from limb. I want to see the fear in their eyes as they realize that they brought upon their own destruction. The boy thought for a moment before sighing. I do owe you something, that's for sure. I'll try to figure out what the seal was meant to accomplish, but I'm quite angry at this as well. Someone managed to force a seal upon me without my knowledge, and I didn't even recognize its effects. Thank you, QB. Even if he had his own reasons for it, it really does help me. I got too cocky in my sealing abilities. There's so much more to learn. This makes that obvious. Your gratitude is well placed, human. It seems like your body is regaining consciousness. Even as the wind's words echoed in the temple, Naruto could already see his mindscape fading. When Naruto opened his eyes this time, he noticed that there was far less light than in his mindscape. He was inside somewhere, though the exact location was unknown to him. Wooden walls and windows with closed curtains were his only clue. Activating his Byakugan, it became clear pretty quickly that he was at an inn of some sort. They must have taken me here after I blacked out. Sitting up, he looked around. Neither Jiraiya nor Yakumo were anywhere to be found. They were probably buying supplies of one type or another. Or maybe Jiraiya was off being a pervert at the local springs while Yakumo was gathering supplies. That sounded more likely. Getting to his feet, Naruto had only a little trouble getting his balance due to his head spinning. Shaking it off, he noted that he was not in his battle attire, but sleepwear. Who changed me out of my clothes? He didn't like the idea of an old pervert like Jiraiya doing it, but Yakumo doing so seemed even more embarrassing for different reasons. Shaking those thoughts aside, he stood in front of the inn's obligatory full-body mirror and disrobed to his underwear. Activating his Crimson Byakugan, he channeled chakra throughout his entire network. I don't see any seals besides the Shikifujin, and my chakra seems to be normal. Well, as normal as it can be, I guess. There wasn't anything to worry about, it seemed. Activating one of his summoning seals, Naruto pulled a new set of clothes from a storage room back home. Quickly getting dressed in his usual attire, the boy smiled. Walking back over to the bed, he found Shiva leaning against the wall and hung it from his hip. He felt far more comfortable with it on, once more. However, that comfort quickly disappeared as he felt two large and strange chakra signatures approaching. His gaze easily penetrated the walls and took stock of two figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds. The first was easily larger than Jiraiya, with blue flesh, gills, beady eyes and an enormous club on his back. The chakra pool on him was so astronomical that he thought he might be a Jinchuriki for a moment. Dots started to connect though. After meeting Suigetsu and seeing his Kubikarabuho, the blonde did research into the other 7 swordsmen and their weapons. It was a stretch. But that could very well be Hoshigaki Kisame. The other man he immediately recognized as Uchiha Itachi. The Konohagakure missing nin were a list he'd become intimately familiar with since Hyuga tended to be assigned to capture and retrieval division squads whenever possible. The hunter nin found skilled Byakugan users indispensable, after all. There was only a few moments to make a decision. There was absolutely no way he could take on 1's rank, let alone 2. Even with his Zero Tails mode, Something like that was hopeless. He quickly spread the curtains on one of the windows, opened it and jumped out. It was only on the third floor, so minimal chakra reinforcement was necessary to keep him from injury. Of course, it did surprise the young couple whom he landed in front of, but he couldn't spare them any thought as he began running. That seemed to be the correct decision as the window he jumped from soon exploded outward. "I found him, Itachi," the blue-skinned man remarked as he pulled his bandaged club out and jumped to the floor as well. He left a crater from the impact, and everyone scattered. It was only a few seconds before he caught up to the Hyuga. Tossing one of his special kunai past Kisame and into a wall, he quickly teleported several meters away in time to dodge a swipe from what he knew had to be the legendary Saimata. "Oh? Got a trick up your sleeve, do you? That makes two of us." Thinking quickly, Naruto realized he didn't have any choice but to activate Zero Tails mode and hope for the best. His crimson Byakugan became bright as he pulled out Shiva. "I've worked too hard to die here, Kisame-san." The void kept him calm even in the face of an opponent he knew he couldn't beat. "Oh, so you know who I am then, brat? That makes things easier." The bandages fell off of the club, and Naruto grimaced upon realizing he was right. It really was Saimata, and that really was Kisame. Just surviving this encounter would require his complete focus. And Itachi hadn't even showed up yet. Gripping Shiva in one hand, and a trio of kunai in the other with his special tags, he exhaled. "As I have said, I worked too hard to reach today to die to someone like you." The other man only grinned and rushed forward. Awaken, upheaval. Naruto quickly rose up a nearly vertical ramp of concrete out of the sidewalk as he molded his chakra. When Kisame broke through it with a punch, Naruto was ready. Shadow Kunai Clone Jutsu. 3 became 3,000 kunai that were tossed at his opponent. Predictably, Kisame shielded himself with his sword. However, he was not the target and the cramped street they fought on soon shone with thousands of seal matrices. "Huh? What's this?" Kisame wondered, having never seen something like this before. "Some kinda Hiraishin thing, maybe?" Naruto didn't react, the void wouldn't allow it. Infinite summoning seal. He was behind Kisame and slashed at his side with Shiva. Now her was 10 meters away and in no danger of Kisame retaliatory strike. Now he hit Kisame from behind with a palm strike filled with lightning chakra. This went on for what felt like hours, but only lasted seconds. Kisame showed no signs of fatigue, and Naruto was doing all he could just to stay alive. Everything he hit the man with seemed to have no effect. Seeking the relative safety of a seal several meters away, he tried to analyze the situation. "That's a pretty annoying technique, brat," Kisame noted with a grin. "You really are something special, to keep me guessing like that. And those strikes of yours, those aren't Juoken. Itachi was right when he said it would be worth coming after you. Still, you'll never hurt me with those little stings. You need something with more power." Only through his instantaneous movement was Naruto capable of evading Kisame's next strike. In a moment, the man closed the distance and left a crater where he had been, destroying the seal there. "There's really no way I can do anything. The difference between us is just too great." The blonde realized. Jiraiya was nowhere to be found, Yakumo was who knows where, and he was going to die out here. He didn't have a choice anymore, did he? "If you don't want to die, QB, we're going to need to work together to survive against this monster." There was no response, but he felt the amount of the fox's Yuki increase. Red energy materialized around him, forming a loose shell. When it settled, it was in the rough shape of a fox, complete with tail, ears and claws. His nails had lengthened, and his whiskers were far more pronounced. "Oh? You're going to come right to me instead of running away?" Kisame wondered in genuine surprise. "I can't kill you if I don't get closer." The Kyuubi's influence was already showing itself, but Naruto really needed the boost. His aura enveloped Shiva in that moment. Generally, a bluish-white mist surrounded the sword. However, that mist darkened into a red so dark that it was nearly black. Kisame had the grin of a madman firmly plastered on his face, serrated teeth clear in the mid-afternoon sun. He held Saimata in both hands and was waiting for the boy to make the first move. Naruto complied. He didn't even need to rely on his seals. The enormous power boost from going into one-tails mode allowed him to appear in front of the shark-like man. Shiva bore down upon the swordsman, who held it back with his strange blade. "I gotta say, brat, you really know how to pack a punch when you want to. You aren't like those other prissy nobles that dance around like the wind." Naruto was silent as his Yuki funneled into Shiva, coating Saimata in a thick coat of ice. In the recesses of what was left of Naruto's logical reasoning, he recalled the weapon's ability to consume chakra. He was really hoping that what he was doing could act as some sort of counter. The Yuki shell around Shiva would hopefully provide some defense to that ability. However, If it could consume Yuki as well, then perhaps simply freezing the material the blade was made of would work. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. When did I end up inside the wall? That was the only thing that Naruto could think as he found himself suddenly across the street from his opponent. Kisame had his leg outstretched and the blonde realized what had to have happened. He strained to keep focus on the swordsman, but things were starting to go blurry about the time he coughed up blood. Still, for all that strength you don't know how to use it. You're an interesting kid, but I've got a job to do. Slowly, Kisame began to close the gap between them. Things started getting dark very quickly. "QB, we're gonna die here if I don't get some more." Somehow, he managed to make the request as more Yuki enveloped his body. One tail split into two as his wounds healed completely. "I'm not gonna die that easily," Naruto stated evenly as he ripped his body from the bricks. "I don't care about your job, or whoever gave it to you. I won't let someone like you end things for me after I've lost so much." He slashed Shiva, creating 100 blades of black and red ice that suspended in mid-air. Kisame, for what it was worth, seemed somewhat impressed. Instead of launching the blades at his opponent, Naruto gave a mad grin that was definitely influenced by his Baijuo. Hyuga, art of sword puppetry. Once again, Naruto launched himself towards his opponent. This time, he was even faster than before and Kisame focused on him. Saimata came up to block the blonde, but he wasn't paying attention as the blades followed his movements. Two of them impaled his side from his blind spot, launching him into, and through, a building. Watching for any movement within, his Byakugan picked up a terrifying scene. Kisame pulled the blades from his side and the holes immediately closed. Chakra from Saimata, his chakra, was funneled into his body and healed him. "Oh boy, now I'm gonna fucking kill you, brat. That shit hurts." Kisame rushed out of the building and slammed his sword into Naruto. The chakra shell mitigated the force a little, but he still found himself in a completely different street as he was pushed through 3 different buildings before he stopped. Luckily, his two tails mode was healing him at such a rate that his injuries were gone, but he wasn't sure if even that would be enough. He already felt himself barely retaining control of his emotions just using this state. Anything more and he was sure he'd lose it completely. "I leave for a few minutes and you get yourself into a mess like this? What am I gonna do with you?" So focused on Kisame, Naruto didn't even notice Jiraiya. Still, can't exactly let this go unpunished. The white-haired sage was standing atop a large toad just behind him. Kisame then appeared from the hole he'd been launched through. "So you weren't alone, eh, Itachi?" Turning his eyes a little further down the street, Naruto then noticed Kisame's traveling companion. Putting things together, he realized that Itachi and Jiraiya must have been fighting one street over. "Oh, that's where you went, Itachi." "We're leaving, Kisame." The Uchiha stated in such a dead tone Naruto thought for sure he was in the void. "Things are getting out of hand." The blue-skinned man looked like he might argue for a moment before nodding. Looking back at the blonde, Kisame grinned. "Next time, brat. Make sure you get stronger, I want to see what you can do if you really try. That should give me a really interesting fight if you've got as much potential as I think." With that, the two of them disappeared. Jiraiya's frog disappeared in a cloud of smoke and Naruto allowed his Yuki to disperse, returning to his normal state. "You okay, kid?" the Sannin wondered. He didn't get an answer though, as Naruto was already unconscious once again. "What am I gonna do with you if you faint every time we talk?" He chuckled as he caught the teen, keeping him from hitting the ground. "Still, this is very concerning." Looking back at where the two missing nin had just been, Jiraiya sighed. "We'll need to get serious very quickly if I'm going to keep you alive." Naruto didn't know how long it was until he came to. He didn't go into the mindscape this time. The QB had already given him its message, it didn't need him. What he did know is that the room he found himself in was definitely different. After that fight, he imagined Jiraiya had to take him to a different city. Kisame and him had destroyed a good amount of property in their brief encounter. Jiraiya and Itachi probably were even worse. "Nice of you to join us." The blonde heard Jiraiya's voice as he sat up, and turned to see him sitting on the floor with a scroll in front of him. "How are you feeling? Your first fight against an S-rank had to have been exhausting, but I'm just glad you managed to survive it." Removing the blanket covering him, Naruto nodded. "It was terrifying. I didn't have time to think about what I was going to do and nothing I did seemed to have an effect on him until I started channeling the QB's power. Even then, he was still tossing me around like a doll. Is that really the kind of power that I have to deal with as a Jinchuriki?" The Sannin rolled up his scroll and seemed to be thinking. The kind of power Kisame has isn't common. His moniker is the tailless-tailed beast, after all. He craves battle and can outlast anyone, especially with his mastery of Saimata. "As you say though, That is the kind of power you need to be prepared to face as the Jinchuriki. You definitely need to get stronger so that if that sort of things happens when I'm not around we don't lose you. The door opened then, where Yakumo emerged. Upon seeing Naruto awake and sitting up, she rushed over. "Naruto, you're okay. Jiraiya told me what happened and I was so scared I'd lose you. I was only gone for 15 minutes at most, we needed more food for the trip and I knew it wouldn't take long but if I had known what was going to happen I would have stayed and kept you safe." One moment she was in the doorway, the next she was somehow crushing him in a hug. Glancing at the old pervert, Naruto noticed him furiously scribbling down notes. Channeling chakra to his hand, he tossed an ember at his notepad then set it aflame. "Leave my friends out of that, great sage." His tone left no room for argument. The Sannin simply grinned before looking serious. "We do need to talk now that Yakumo is here as well." The painter heard that and let go of Naruto. Somehow she'd ended up in his bed, so she just sat there instead of finding a chair. "In my fight with Itachi, I managed to get him to spill a few tidbits of information that's got me on edge. The moment I saw the robes I already knew the two of them were from Akatsuki, which in of itself is something significant. Akatsuki, if you didn't know, is a group of S-rank missing nin mercenaries. Their number is unknown, and their power is ridiculously high. For the right price, they can be hired for anything a normal shinobi can, but they've never failed a mission. Non-shinobi countries even hire them for waging war or defending against aggressors. It takes a lot to be able to survive against them, let alone kill them, but it has been done. More importantly, it seems like the Akatsuki is chasing after Naruto right now. I'm not sure if it's because you're a Jinchuriki, a Uzumaki, Minato's son or a Hyuga with abnormal eyes. There's all sorts of possible reasons, but they seem to want you alive, rather than dead. They're playing hunter nin, not assassins. That works to our advantage, because they won't be going for lethal methods. We're going to have to increase your training by a lot. I think it's time that you finally learned the other technique that made your father famous." With that, Jiraiya opened up his palm. Naruto saw the chakra molding within his hand and noted the sheer amount of power he was pushing through his tenketsu. The power then materialized and began to rotate rapidly until there was a blue, spinning orb in the old man's hand. "As you know, this is the Rasengan. I know you haven't found a way to properly implement it into your style fluidly. I really think you should work on that though. The number of things it's useful for, a number of situations it's aided me in are too many to count. I'll do my best to help on that front, because it's the only one of his jutsu I have access to. I don't know how the Hiraishin works. I don't think anyone but Lord Second and your father do, in all honesty. I don't even have any scrolls from him explaining it. We need to find Tsunade though, as Tobirama-sama's scrolls are in the Senju compound. If we can get her back, perhaps she'd be persuaded to let you look into them. If not, we'd have to find your father's. While your parents' old house is yours by right, it's protected by the work of a true seal master. Just getting inside would be the easy part." Naruto thought about everything he'd been told so far. "I understand what you're getting at. You want me to incorporate my father's style into my own because those two jutsu alone made him S-rank material?" Jiraiya chuckled and shook his head. "You're on the right track, but just having those two won't make you an S-rank." Minato was also highly intelligent, had amazing reflexes, a spot-on instinct in his seals. "I think you have the potential to match him, and maybe even surpass him, but you have to be led that way. Just obtaining the Hiraishin and mastering the Rasengan won't do that. You need to become S-rank on your own, not because of a tool or technique. Otherwise you're only B-rank in S-rank clothing, right?" "I see. I'll do what I can to become stronger though. I'm not going to die to a bunch of criminals and traitors. I have far too much I need to accomplish before I can see Gigi again." As Naruto stood from the bed, Jiraiya couldn't help but smile. The way of speaking and choice of clothing might be different, but that boy was definitely Minato's son. Maybe Danzo was worrying for nothing. Naruto would protect Konoha because it was Hido's village, he was sure of it. "Jiraiya-sensei, there is something else." The white-haired man was pulled from his thoughts as he regarded his student. He knew that voice. It was quite easy to distinguish between when Naruto was simply being formal and when he was inside the void, as he called it. At least, it had become easier after being with him during that month between the second and third rounds. He was certain that the boy was firmly within it, and that worried him. He hadn't even been in it when talking about Kisame. "All right. I'm listening." The blonde seemed to be collecting himself a bit and was silent. Both the Sannin and Yakumo looked at him curiously. He wasn't really someone to hold back when it came to important things like this. "I found out why I passed out the first time. Well, more like, I figured out the things surrounding it, but I don't actually know all the important details." Jiraiya perked up at this. He hadn't really found much in the way of what had happened to him, himself. He wasn't a medic, but still knew a thing or two about how to perform a diagnostic scan. The best he could do is identify some foreign chakra, but it was in such trace amounts he couldn't be sure it was actually something related. I talked with the QB in my mindscape and he explained to me that someone had placed a seal on me of some sort. I'm not sure what it was meant to do exactly, but the way it described the seal made it clear they were trying to manipulate me. Could it have been Danzo? Jiraiya wondered with a grimace. If he was trying to use it as an insurance policy, that would only drive the boy away from Konoha though. I'm not really sure what to make of it myself. The chakra in the seal seemed to have the purpose and effect of changing my emotional state around others. Naruto was clearly struggling to stay within the void at this point. Yakumo couldn't stand seeing her friend struggle this much, but knew she couldn't say much that would soothe him. Instead, she placed her hand over his, smiling to him when he looked at her. That seemed to steel his resolve as he continued. He was outside of the void at this point though, exposing his emotional state to them. The QB told me that it seemed the chakra affected me in my interactions with two specific people. I thought long and hard about it and there only seems to be one explanation. What happened before was one of the times it did. Around Yakumo they pushed against me, trying to neutralize my emotional state and drive my thoughts elsewhere. When I learned that, I wasn't really sure what it could mean, except that someone didn't want me around Yakumo. Probably not Danzo then. Jiraiya continued train of thought. Even if Danzo doesn't like that Yakumo has little ties to the village, he'd rather those two be tied to each other, that way he only has to keep one grounded to Konoha to keep the other. Someone wants to push the two apart though. Is it to push one of them out of the village? Or to isolate them for manipulation maybe? The other interactions that affected me seem really obvious in hindsight. It was with Karen. Realization dawned in both Jiraiya and Yakumo's eyes the moment he uttered her name. The chakra tried to soothe me, to calm me around her. It seemed to force me to lower my guard without realizing it. I probably didn't notice because I wanted to find my family so much, and she seemed so open around me. I think that it had to have been that time in the seal shop back in Kusa though. She had the opportunity to do it when I flared my chakra to prove I was an Uzumaki. She really played me and I was blind to it. Without the void restraining him, anger easily crept into Naruto's voice for both of them to hear. It wasn't something they were used to from him. If I wasn't so enamored with her from the seal, maybe I could have done something about Hayate and Haido. The chance isn't high, but certainly higher than what actually happened. Feeling his emotions go unchecked, the boy firmly situated himself back into the void. I shouldn't dwell on such things though. The point is, Karen used an Uzumaki seal against me and the QB destroyed it because it was endangering us. Now that I know what happened, I won't forgive her. She lied to me, tricked me and tried to push me away from my last childhood friend. No, she did more than that, Naruto, Jiraiya stated with a sigh. She tried affecting Konoha's Jinchuriki, possibly with the intention of turning you against us. If any of the higher-ups hear about this, they'll probably put a very high bounty on her head, and her entire family. This is something that goes so far beyond a trick or a lover's spat. This is an outright declaration of war to some people. If you don't want that girl dead, you'll have to be very careful about who learns about this. You've dealt with the problem on your end, so I'll let you decide what you want to do about it. Just know, the fate of Kusa as a village probably lies in that decision. This is pretty serious then, huh? The blonde wondered, getting a nod from his mentor. I didn't even think about the political ramifications of it. My only thoughts were, well, frankly, I'm really angry. Despite the words, Naruto didn't actually seem to be outwardly any different from usual. No. Maybe angry isn't the emotion. You feel like she betrayed you? Yakumo offered, recalling that illusion Tuya had placed her under. With this new information, it was becoming more clear what had been their plan. Back during the third exam, the other Uzumaki girl, Tuya, used an auditory genjutsu on me. I think it showed me what they wanted to do. Well, a little of it, anyways. I was in a forest, an unfamiliar one. It was dark and I was lost. I eventually made my way out of the trees and found both Karen and you. You were talking about something. I don't really remember. I do remember that she convinced you to leave the village and live with her and her family in Kusa though. Jiraiya seemed lost in thought, so the two teens led him in silence. I think that all of this is important. It's possible that she just wanted to show you something to take advantage of your emotional instability, or perhaps she wanted to give you a glimpse of a future she was certain you couldn't possibly change. I'm more inclined to believe the latter. After decades of experience as both a soldier and a spy, my gut tends to lead me in the right direction. What does that mean for me? Naruto wondered. No matter how skilled with seals Karen is, It seems really weird that she'd not only make something like this, but be able to use it on someone like me without me noticing. I feel like someone else taught it to her, and maybe that person is the real culprit behind all of this. Jiraiya nodded sagely. Do you think this person is with the same group as Itachi and Kisame? That's the real question, isn't it? He asked. Personally, I'm thinking that's a no. This person, whoever they are, used Karen to get to you. Someone skilled enough at Fuinjutsu to teach her to use both this and to do what she did at the exams is most definitely an S rank, by my estimation. They would have no issues with simply kidnapping you, if they really wanted to. On top of that, they likely would have been able to neutralize the Kyuubi and keep you somewhere even I'd be unable to locate. I've learned not to underestimate Fuinjutsu at this point. So, you think that there are two entirely different sets of people that are after me? Jiraiya couldn't help himself from laughing, causing Naruto to become a bit worried. What did I say? Kid, I hate to break it to you, but basically everyone is after you. The sage finally got out after his seemingly hearty chuckle turned hollow. Besides Akatsuki and this mysterious person who's probably an Uzumaki, I can't even count the number of groups interested in you. There's Kumo, for one. They went after your mother. They went after your cousin. You're an Uzumaki, a Jinchuriki and have the Byakugan. There's no way they aren't going to try something at some point. Then the Ziwa? Those guys still have a grudge against Minato, and you're a prime target for getting their short-sighted revenge. It's in your best interest that you not encounter any Iwa shinobi older than 30 before you're an S rank yourself. And then there's the domestic threats. All of the shinobi clans have been eyeing you for the longest time, for one. If they could secure a marriage with you, they'd get Hyuga and Uzumaki blood in the family, the only bloodline that could hold the Kyuubi, meaning all future Jinchuriki would belong to them, and that's not even getting into the relationship they'd gain with the Kurama clan. Your strange sort are those unused contracts you've got. In fact, I'd almost say you need to watch yourself more in the village than out on missions. I see. I've always been careful around the other main branch members, but I didn't even think about the other clans. We're off topic though. What about this Uzumaki Sealmaster? Whoever they are, you think they were strong enough to overpower me, but didn't? Even when I was in Kusa. Why? Isn't that because if they had Naruto's loyalty, he'd fight the whole world to protect the entire family? Yakumo wondered. From what I've heard, all Uzumaki tend to be like that. Even if you're a Hyuga, I can definitely say you have that trait. That's precisely what I'm thinking. The Sannin agreed. They used Karen to get close to you, not knowing whether a sister or a lover would be more effective. She went the sultry route, you took the bait thanks to that seal and your own obsession with the Uzumaki clan, and the plan was formed. When the exams came around, Karen made sure to spend as much time with you as possible. I imagine that the plan is to leave you alone for a time, allow your feelings of loss to simmer and use the seal to make you think about Karen more and more. Then, when she finally shows back up, she probably comes along with her family and they offer to take you in, for you to become a true Uzumaki. You make the choice yourself, or you think you do, and then they've got you in their clutches with your full loyalty. The only loose end would be Yakumo here. Do you think they'd try to kill her? The blonde asked, his eyes flashing red a moment. It wasn't the usual pale red of his Byakugan, but a crimson that came along with the Kyuubi's chakra. Jiraiya pondered it a moment. I can't believe that all of this is going so well. Maybe tying Naruto to the village will be this simple. I'd say it's not unlikely. Don't worry though, between whatever you can convince Tsunadeheim to teach you and my training, I can ensure that both of you will be prepared for anything they try. I give you my word I'll do my best to keep both of you safe. The innocent and thankful smiles he received gave the man mixed feelings, somewhere between happiness and guilt. I'll let Danzo do the manipulating. I just need to make sure I don't lose these two, like I lost my other students. Several days had passed since the incident with the Akatsuki. The group from Konoha found themselves a kilometer off of the main road they'd been following, so as to not disturb others. At the insistence of the two teenagers, Jiraiya agreed to a sparring session so that they could become more familiar with the power disparity between themselves and an S rank. Iwaken, Grand Divide. That little technique was more than a little annoying considering how often Naruto used it. He was sure that Tsunade would enjoy it though, considering it so closely matched her own style. Some quick footwork was all it really took to avoid it, but the Sannin understood how impressive it could really be in the right circumstances. As Jiraiya landed, the very same blonde was already upon him with Shiva in hand. His style was one the man was familiar with. It was quite apparent that he had learned it from an Anbu, and that meant that he was able to rather easily counter it with one of his kunai. That's some speed you've got there, kid. You hardly even need that seal of yours when you activate that Zero Tails mode of yours. I don't want to rely on the Kyuubi though. He admitted. I want to become S rank on my own, Just like Gigi and Otosama. Now that was a motivation that the man could respect, but the ninja world was unforgiving. I like that goal, kid. But you've got to be pragmatic. Remember how Kisame tossed you around? You need to take power wherever you can get it, or you'll lose everything. Jiraiya kicked the boy in the midsection and quickly used a Kawarimi to dodge a trio of lightning-laced shuriken aimed at him. You two do make a fearsome combination, I'll give you that. The entire fight Yakumo had kept to the shadows and sought to ambush him with projectiles or solid illusions. Meanwhile, Naruto kept him from searching for her with constant pressure in close combat. Shadow Shuriken Clone Jutsu. In unison, both of his students announced the technique, and the man was subjected to several thousand spinning blades from every direction. To top it off, all of them were layered with one elemental chakra or another, just to add an extra punch. Quickly moving through hand seals, Jiraiya slammed his hand on the ground. Doton, swamp of the underworld. An enormous hold opened up where he was standing just then. He fell to the murky waters below and managed to evade imminent danger. Alright, I think I've got a pretty good idea of you two, so let's end it here. He called up from the sinkhole. Jumping up back to level ground, he saw the two of them come out from the trees. I definitely agree with the assessments I've been given before. Easily B rank, both of you, and I'd say if you were working that well against an A rank you'd have the upper hand if it was just one. There's lots of room for improvement, but the baseline you're both at is rather impressive given your age. Thank you, sensei. The two both responded. Sometimes it was scary how in unison they could be. Naruto was the one who continued. I'm still not really sure how best to integrate the Rasengan though. Using normal chakra is unfamiliar for me. I'm so used to utilizing one of my natures that I just forget I even know how to do it. Habits like that can be hard to break. Getting Chunin to start using elemental ninjutsu who are used to using genjutsu is pretty similar. I think that we can break you from it though. The white-haired man hummed in thought a moment. Alternatively, you could try your hand at adding elemental chakra to the Rasengan. I'm not gonna lie though, even your old man couldn't get that right and it kept blowing up. It'll take some time to do. I hadn't even thought about doing that, but I guess it makes sense now that I think about it. The blonde formed a Rasengan in his palm. The blue energy muddied into a light brown. However, it soon became apparent that it would be more difficult to do than just adding earth nature chakra as the ball halted its movement and became a Rasengan-sized stone. Well, at least it didn't explode. If I had to make a suggestion, I'd say either wind or water would be far easier to try. Easier is relative though, considering you're still trying to do something this complex. Thanks sensei. I'll give it my best shot. I'm sure that I'll be able to make it work. That look of focus that the Uzumaki had on his face reminded the old man of Minato. With a chuckle, he placed a hand on his shoulder. Sensei? If not for those Byakugan, Jiraiya might even mistake him for Minato. I'm sure you will. Still, we've got more searching to do. If we hurry we might even be able to locate Tsunade before we miss her again, like the last 3 towns. It's getting pretty late, sensei. I don't think we're going to find her here. Yakumo piped up as the sun was setting. Even with Naru's Byakugan, it's difficult to find a chakra signature he's never seen before. Plus, she probably is keeping a tight rein on it, considering she's a medic that wants to stay away from ninja life. More like she wants to avoid having to pay off her debts. Jiraiya muttered. Okay, we're out of daylight and it has been a day of disappointment so let's get something to eat. I know a place that's usually pretty good. It wasn't long before they found the restaurant he was talking about. Morizaki's seemed to specialize in barbecued cuisine, considering the smell the entire place was giving off. Nearly the moment that they entered, Jiraiya's eyes widened as he looked at an old blonde that looked to be in her 60s and a black-haired girl carrying a pig that seemed to be in her early 20s. Naruto recalled seeing this woman a few times as he scanned the town with his Byakugan, but didn't think much of her. She was probably just some noblewoman with her attendant. Nothing rare in a place like this. Tsunade Haim. Wait, Tsunade? That's Tsunade? The Hyuga asked him. I thought you said that she would look like she was in her late 20s? That woman is clearly older than even you. The reactions amongst the two groups were quite different. Jiraiya seemed to be in the middle of realizing something important. Yakumo was simply confused as the woman appeared to be in the prime of her youth. The black-haired girl had her hand over her mouth, caught between horror and laughter. The woman that Jiraiya had proclaimed as Tsunade had shattered the glass of alcohol she'd been drinking as her eyebrow twitched. The hell did you just say, brat? Somehow, the room's temperature had noticeably dropped as her words were spoken. Think I'm an old hag, do you? Naruto looked at the woman and felt her killer intent. Quickly, he decided entering the void was an appropriate course of action. I didn't mean any offense by it. I was simply led to believe that Tsunade we were looking for was supposed to look to be in her prime, so I ended up overlooking you because of your appearance. I think my dojutsu must have seen past your genjutsu without realizing it. This didn't seem to make things better as the blonde stood and her killer intent was only increasing. I'll show you that I'm still in my prime, you smartass. It wasn't difficult to see what was about to happen, and how doing so inside the restaurant would be a bad idea. Quickly going back out of the front door, rose a large slab of stone just in front of it to give himself some time. It was shattered within a moment as the legendary sucker's legendary strength was proven to be more than mere myth. Activating Zero Tails mode from the very beginning, Naruto still had some issues with following her movements. She was a brute force fighter though, so using his knowledge of the Awakeners wasn't that difficult to figure out what she would be doing. Just because he had some idea what she would be doing didn't make things that much easier though. Her heel drop made his Grand Divide look infantile in the damage it caused. I guess you really are Tsunade, he muttered, and deciding going all out would be the only thing that kept him alive. Mizuken, fishing net. Thrusting both palms outward, Naruto molded the water vapor in the air into a large net that halted Tsunade's movement, if only momentarily. It wasn't solid, so she couldn't really punch it, but pulsing out her chakra destabilized it enough for it to no longer matter. Unsheathing Shiva, the boy formed an enormous and thick wall of ice in front of him to try and slow her that way. Shoving it into the ground, he used the same technique he had against Gaara and turned the entire area into a frozen wasteland. 6 kunai were already in hand by the time she'd destroyed his obstacle. What the hell are you? Some kind of Yuki? Not sparing any time to answer her, he created a dozen shadow clones to occupy her long enough to set up what was becoming his signature technique. He was already in the air and spinning quickly by the time they reached her. Shadow kunai clone jutsu. His seals were set up and he was dropping back to the ground when his final clone dissipated. Its dying memory was of the woman making bum rushing him. Infinite summoning seal activate. Despite the fact that he had escaped death by a hair's breadth, Naruto grinned. The look of disbelief on the woman's face as she regarded the frozen landscape full of seals was something to draw satisfaction from. No, I'm not a Yuki. I'm an Uzumaki that just happens to have some tricks up my sleeve. Tricks or not, that won't be enough to take me down, brat. She rushed at him again, but he was already behind her. Stay still. Deeply settled into the void and with his seal network set up, Naruto was able to more calmly assess the situation. He'd been caught off guard before, but it seemed like the Slug Princess had suffered for her lack of shinobi lifestyle. He was able to keep an eye on her movements and disappear from her reach when necessary. Perhaps it was the adrenaline, or maybe Jiraiya's constant training over the last couple of weeks, but Naruto felt confident enough to try and impress his sensei. Sensei wanted me to use my father's technique and my style, and this seems like a good time to do so, he muttered to himself. The words reached Tsunade however, given she once again had come within pummeling range before he summoned himself elsewhere. Sensei? Father's jutsu? Looking towards where Naruto's new location was, she saw him form a very familiar scene. The blonde hair, the calm attitude, the teleporting, and now that spinning blue orb, it all caused her to stall momentarily. It can't be. Could he really be? The boy then teleported right in front of her and was prepared to shove his Rasengan into her stomach in her daze. Enough, Naruto. Jiraiya called out. We're here to talk to her, not to get into a fight. The younger blonde halted in his tracks, his red eyes fading as his Rasengan followed suit. Defending yourself is one thing, but that is not something to use in a sparring match. Even Tsunadeheim would take some time to recover from that. The boy bowed to Tsunade. I apologize for anything I might have said that offended you, Tsunade-sama. The woman was still in shock at her little game of connect the dots. Are you Kushina and Minato's kid? She finally managed to ask. He nodded, and that was the last thing he remembered before he passed out for the third time during this trip. Seals, exhaustion, and now suffocation. What would be next, and when would this habit of his end? Naruto thought himself rather lucky at this particular moment. Unlike his last two blackouts, he happened to be near Tsunade this time and she was able to revive him with some medical ninjutsu. Of course, she was the cause for it. But that was neither here nor there, he supposed. After regaining consciousness, Naruto had fixed the street and its newfound winterscape, also removing the seals in the process. The damage to the road was fixed with some earth-nature chakra manipulation relatively easily. Then the quintet had migrated to a room that Jiraiya had rented for the night. The shock of meeting Naruto face to face really helped Jiraiya convince Tsunade to come along to talk. Sensei really is dead then, huh? The older blonde wondered with a sad smile. I didn't think that old fart would ever meet this Hinigami at the rate he was going. Her hands were folded in her lap as she sat on one of the beds. Shizune was next to her while Jiraiya and his students were across from her on the other bed. That position really is cursed. Why would you pick someone with my bad luck though? I'd probably die within the first day. Konoha is a place full of darkness. Naruto was the one to reply, not Jiraiya. I've seen it all my life. It's not their fault, the world is just dark. I did manage to find a few specks of light in the darkness, even if some of them have been taken from me. I still fight on though, to protect the few lights I have left, and to show those who are gone that their faith in me wasn't for nothing. I didn't really know Hokage-sama that well, but Hidojiji always spoke highly of him. You may not be as strong as you once were, but you're a medic. Konoha needs healing. Even if you don't want to become Hokage. I already lost Gigi, and the Uzumaki I met tried to manipulate me. I want to know that I have family somewhere that I can turn to. Purple Eyes were turned to the floor as he spoke. He really is Kushina's boy. Just like she was at that age. He's got more control over his emotions, but I can still tell. Tsunade placed her hand on Naruto's hair, ruffling it softly. I think I'd like having family again, brat. Just don't call me old again or I'll have to really punish you. The Hyuga looked at her with a sly smirk. If you can catch me. Bachan. Despite her words, Tsunade only smiled. Are you going to become the Hokage then? The woman looked to the side. That much I can't be sure of. I was never really one for the hat and robes. I always seemed to surround myself with them, but I can't stand the position. It took my grandfather, my great-uncle, my sensei and my favorite cousin's husband. Not to mention both Dan and Nawaki wanted to be Hokage. It's got too much bad memories. I know you hate the idea of it but there's not really anyone better suited. We didn't really get to it during the explanation, but I have an even bigger reason to reject the office now. There are two separate parties trying to take Naruto, likely due to his Jinchuriki status. One is either an Uzumaki or has access to Uzumaki seals, the other is the Akatsuki. I haven't had the chance to figure out the why of it, but both are dangerous groups. With Tenseigan, if you refuse as well then Danzu becomes the next most likely candidate. He's already got some interest in Naruto as well, but didn't try anything with Sensei around. He even voluntarily suggested you become the Hokage rather than him. If you refuse though, he'll probably take up the position readily. The slug Sanin sighed. That man huh? Things really are getting out of hand with Sensei nowhere to be found. Glancing at Shizune, she steeled herself. The truth is, things are more complicated for me as well. Orochimaru found me a couple days before you did. He wants me to fix his arms. I didn't want to believe him when he said he'd killed Sensei, but I see it really must be the case if you're confirming it. He told me he could bring Dan and Nawaki back from the dead if I helped him. I know he has to be using Tobirama's technique, but still. I want to see them again so much. You don't want to do that, Tsunade-sama. Surprisingly, it was Yakumo this time. I know you don't know much about me, but I'm Kurama Yakumo, head of the Kurama clan, though my uncle is regent until I make Chunin rank. I was born with the Shishugan, our clan's Kekkei Genkai. Well, I suppose that's not quite right. Everyone in our clan is born with it. I was born with the full extent of our clan's Kekkei Genkai, something they thought could never happen again. My bloodline allows me to make illusions physical, to cast genjutsu on reality itself. It's far too much for someone to handle though. In the end, a large majority of my powers become embodied in it, a split personality of mine. It was psychotic, psychopathic and genocidal. She took control of my body when I was much younger and by the time I came to, both of my parents were dead. The clan didn't blame me, but I did. My powers were sealed away for a long time, until I met Naruto and Daihi. They did more for me than I could ever repay. I did something abhorrent when I first got control of my powers though. Yakumo's hands balled into fists in her lap as she struggled through her explanation. My powers are strongest when I channel them through artistic expression. I found my parents' corpses in our clan mausoleum and I drew them alive again after I had set their remains sitting up on a bench. I watched as they moved again, little by little. It didn't seem to be enough though, they were just animate corpses without a soul. I drew more and more, trying my best to capture all my memories of my parents. I was there for days at least, maybe a couple of weeks. In the end, I desecrated the remains of my parents and filled their husks with something. It wasn't them, only a shell of what I imagined they were. That was before Id took over. He killed my parents again, but this time it was because whatever was inside those bodies tried to kill me. It turned them to ash and I stayed in that crypt another few days until Naruto and Daihi found me. I became so obsessed with bring them back. But I know all I did was make them hate me for it. I only wanted to apologize to them and Some part of me still wishes it hadn't intervened back then, but if she hadn't then I wouldn't be here today with Naru, and Kami knows he'll need all the help he can get. She didn't know when, but Yakumo realized that Naruto's hand was over hers. She didn't even entertain the thought to pull away from it. In fact, she made an effort to scoot closer to Naruto, leaning against his body. Tsunade watched the interaction with interest, but thought it best to stay on topic. You may be right. I know I can't bring back the dead, no matter how much I'd love to. As a doctor, I understand that. As an older sister and a lover though, I want them back. Tsunade, even if Orochimaru really did bring them back, do you know how that jutsu works? Her silence was vague, so he explained anyways. Having everyone in the room on the same page would be for the best. You have to sacrifice a living person in order to create a vessel for the soul to reside in. On top of that, the summoner has complete control over their actions until they're dispelled. That would mean that not only would the blood of 2 innocents be on your hands, but Orochimaru would have complete and total control over Dan and Nawaki's physical form and be the one who determined when he allowed their souls to rest. Do you really think that they would be okay with that? Do you think you could live with yourself? You really have grown up, Jiraiya. Tsunade mentioned as she looked towards the ground. I'm supposed to smarter and more mature than you, and you're telling me what the right choice is. I understand what you're saying is true, and that helping him would be a bad idea whether he was going to bring them back or not. I know what he's capable of, and how much not healing him hurts his chances in a fight. If I don't help him though, and he still gets his arms back, he'll just use them against me. He can't summon anything if he's dead. The cold tone and merciless gaze that Naruto used made it clear he was settled deep within the void. If the problem is Orochimaru himself, the solution is easy. In his weakened state the two of you should be able to take him out. Was there anyone else with him when you met? A silver-haired teenager in glasses. I don't know anything about him, but he was probably somewhere in the range of B or low A rank based on his chakra. Shizune responded, catching wind of Tsunade's hesitance. The raven-haired girl knew better than anyone how hard this was for her, but they needed to do this, for her sake. That's preposterous. I almost lost to Naruto and he wasn't even trying that hard. I'm too rusty, taking on someone like Orochimaru will just kill me, even if he's lost the use of his arms. Sure, you're no longer at your peak, Jiraiya stated. I'd still say you're plenty strong enough to offer support. Orochimaru is likely at about your level without the use of his arms, and I'll be there. It's not a bad idea, all things considered. Especially if we can use the fact that you're supposed to help him to spring a trap. When is he supposed to show up to get an answer from you? She seemed uncomfortable with the idea still, but the medic finally gave in with a sigh. He'll be back in 3 days, at the ruins of that castle outside of town. He's probably keeping an eye on that location though, so I don't think you can set any traps and expect him to fall for them. You already know he's too clever for that. I can't believe this is how I make my debut back into the shinobi world. Hey, look at it this way, If we go into Konoha with Orochimaru's head, you'll have the council and the people's support right from the gate considering he killed Sensei. It will be the 5th Hokage coming in and avenging the fallen 3rd who gave up his life to protect the village. There's very little you could do to make yourself more popular on the first day in. Now you're sounding like Dansu-sensei. Naruto chastised the man, who rubbed the back of his head. Jiraiya-sensei isn't wrong though. If you really do become the Hokage, killing Orochimaru would be best for both yourself and the village. He has an entire hidden village full of people he's subjected to those experiments of his. Even if you don't want to become Hokage, ridding the world of a man like him can only be a good thing, no matter how you look at it. Yakumo and I will be there to take care of his assistant, whoever he is, so you two can focus on him. As much as you think you won't provide much support, we would only get in the way in a fight of that scale. So, we'll just ensure that you can do your part without being distracted by us or anyone else. Tsunade seemed a bit unsure still but nodded. Okay, I can save whether I'll take up the hat for later. For now, we need to focus on taking out that snake. Any ideas? That's the end guys. If you enjoyed then make sure to leave a comment. This is Chaos Shinobi signing off.